When we go to sleep and we start dreaming, whether it be a dream or even a nightmare, do we know where we go? Is there a place somewhere that we all go to that exists in another dimension? Are we being controlled by something while we sleep? When people sleepwalk or have night terrors and think something's attacking them, is something really attacking them? There's a lot of questions about sleep, and I picked a few movies that the characters in them, well, things don't always end up the way that they hope. So before you go to sleep tonight, you might want to watch this video because we're going to get into it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing five horror movies that deal with dreams, nightmares, terrors in very creative ways and sometimes very simple ways. But these are all movies that you need to check out. And you know me, guys, I love finding films that you guys have never heard of, or at least find films that you haven't thought about or seen at some point in time for a while. And a couple of movies came in the mail, and I thought maybe this is the time to do that list. Now, I have been a huge fan of dreams in general since I was a child. I used to have night terrors when I was a kid. I woke up at the top of the stairs. I used to have this dream of falling down the stairs every night when I went to sleep, and my body would jerk. So yeah, there's some pretty crazy, weird shit going on with dreams, and there's a lot of reasons for it. And some of these movies that I have in my list are going to paint that picture for you in a horrific way, or at least in ways that I think are pretty scary. But yeah, this is my weekly watch list. It's a segment where I pick out movies from all different time frames and all different places, movies that you may not know or enjoy and you haven't seen in a while, stuff that people don't talk about as much. Sometimes they're just kind of right there where it's good enough to watch and you missed out and it could be someone's favorite. If you want to watch these movies, I will tell you where to watch them, and there's going to be links down below for you to wish list or buy them whenever it is available for you. So without further ado, this is 5 films that you should never sleep on. So first up, we have Come True, which is a Canadian film that I saw a couple years ago. It actually came out in 2020. It wasn't on my top 10 list, wasn't on my top 20, but it was somewhere close in there where it almost made that 8 out of 10. It's a movie that I really feel like you should know. So Come True is a story that is about a teenage runaway dealing with some specific thing that they never really fully address in the film. She decides that instead of sleeping outside, she's gonna go and do a sleep study that becomes a very nightmarish descent into the madness that's locked in her brain. She sees frightening images of a man in a place in her dreams that may come to life. This is a movie that examines the power of dreams. So yeah, when I first saw this movie, I actually really enjoyed it, but it wasn't enough to like go on that list, like I said. Now, this movie is directed by Anthony Scott Burns, who is from Edmonton, Canada, and he did Father's Day, which was a segment in the Holidays horror anthology, which is really good. And he also did a movie called Our House, which was about technology amplifying some sort of like poltergeist in a house. So he likes to kind of mix and play with those things, and I personally love that combination. I like taking technology and then like scaring the shit out of people. It's very Cronenberg, you know? I don't know if that's a wholly Canadian thing because Cronenberg's also Canadian, but whatever they're doing up there, I fucking love it. This is no exception. This is a movie that I think is very intense. The soundtrack is so amazing. It really paints the fucking beautiful picture that we're seeing on the screen of this girl going to this study and then her dreams coming to reality in a different way, you know? And it's very suspenseful. It's also mysterious and kind of makes you want to explore dreams in general. But yeah, I really just admire the indie approach to this film because it carries such a bang. You know, it's not going to show you everything, but it's very artistic. The way that they do the dream segments, how horrific it could be if dreams really did come through and fuck with us in reality. And it kind of leaves you with questions at the end, which some people are not fond of, but the unknown is fear. I think if you can explain horror, then you can rationalize or get yourself out of that situation, or at least just find solace and surrender. Horror movies, for me, leave that lasting vibe where it's like, but what if? I would give this movie at least a 7.5, maybe even an 8. It is doing a lot with very little, and I think it's the best case scenario for an indie film where it has so much style, so much music, and so much substance to it that it's doing something that mainstream movies miss. And I really love the vibe of this film. This is a movie that I think you should check out. It's not going to be Freddy Krueger, okay? But it's going to be something that you should enjoy. Anyway, Come True is available on Shudder and AMC Plus. You can wish list it down below if you want to pick it up on Blu-ray. There is another copy out there with the soundtrack, and I thought this is the one that I was gonna get, and I didn't get it. But yeah, check it out. Up next, we have a British film called Paperhouse, and this is from 1989. This was actually gifted to me by Resolution. Thank you so much, man. Which, by the way, if you ever want to donate a movie for me to review or just check out, there is an Amazon wish list down there. If it's not in the wish list, let me know, I'll add it. And then I'll do a review for you, give you a shout out, whatever you want. But it's not necessary, just there if you want. I really like this film. This is a movie that I watched as a kid that scared the ever-living piss out of me. So this is a book, a novel that was written in 1958 by Catherine Storr called Marianne Dreams, which they also made a TV series of this story, the book anyway, called Escape the Night. This is about a young girl who is dealing with some family issues. Not the most pleasant girl in the world, but if you understand why she's acting the way that she does, she is lashing out at the world because of loneliness and boredom, and she somehow finds solace in a dream state where she goes and meets this really sick boy who she has drawn in a picture before she went to sleep. It's a picture of a boy upset in a window, and she befriends him, and then reality starts to change through these dreams. She basically can visit this surreal dream world that she drew in her school composition book, and she adds things and takes things out, and mistakes are happen, and nightmares begin, and things that will really scare you as a child were in this movie for me as a kid. Now, this is actually by director Bernard Rose, who, if you remember, did Candyman. Yes, the sweets for the sweet. And I think if you see this movie, I think it really kind of helps you to understand why they chose him as a director, although he does have a catalog that you could probably pull a few examples from, but it definitely has that vibe and tone about it. There is a soundtrack in this movie by Hans Zimmer that is stellar. It's dark, and it does not feel kind of like a movie that is a kid's drama. Kind of feels like a fable in a lot of ways. So there's this lighthearted element about it, but the music that goes with it really drives this really dark undercurrent of like something is off. And when you get into the dream world and some of the drawings that she puts in there out of anger affect the world that she's in, it starts to get really nightmarish. The imagery in here is fantastic. The way they do the house in a sort of dreamlike state that is based off of her composition book. So her drawings look identical in the dreams. You aren't sure if the dreams are real or reality is real while she's going through all of this. I think this is an underrated gem. If you've never seen it, you should watch it. It may not be a movie that you'll watch all the time, but I highly recommend checking it out. I would probably give this movie at least a 7.5 or an 8. It may not hit as hard for some modern kids, but I think it definitely still packs a punch. You can actually watch this on Prime Video through Freevee, or just watch it on Freevee. You can rent it. This is a Region B German release on Blu-ray. You can pick it up on physical media as well. So I'll put links down if you want to wish list it, if you have a region-free Blu-ray player. It might be something that you want to add to your collection. Up next, we have The Cell, which this is a movie that came out in 2000. It just came out on Arrow for 4K and Blu-ray, and it has both versions of the film on it. So it has both of the movies that you can watch with all of the director's cut and the regular cut. Now, I didn't get a chance to watch the director's cut. We were thinking maybe we should just watch the original cut first before we dip into it. Quick note, by the way, about the director's cut on here, which I did not watch. Apparently, there's a repeating scene in it that isn't supposed to be in it, so they didn't catch it before they mass-produced all of these. I have no idea if they're going to replace it or redo it, but it sucks because, you know, obviously the director's cut is not supposed to have a repeating scene in it or a repeating section for X amount of time, but it's in here. And the sad thing is that this transfer is pretty good, and the extras on here are plenty, and both of them are in 4K, which just really sucks. But other than that, the movie looks good, the transfers look good, and the only thing bad is the old CGI that they have where the guy's face is like kind of pushed around, kind of like Photoshop. This is a movie that is pretty, I don't know, it's a little bit of a mess, but it's also kind of beautiful, and it's also kind of like straight out of the 90s. You know, this is a 2000 film, so it's obviously playing a lot of plays from the 90s, but doing it in that, okay, we've expelled all the ideas in the 90s. Let's go for some weird shit. So it's essentially about an FBI agent who is persuading a social worker, who is played by Jennifer Lopez, to do a new experimental technology with a serial killer who they just so happen to catch. He has a victim stuck in an automated system, kind of like Saw, where they're gonna die eventually. They need to find her within the next 2 or 3 days, or she's gonna die. This guy has already been out conscious from some random sickness that he had. It has affected his brain, so neurologically or something, he can't wake up, and he's in like a coma state. So they put him on this table where they're doing an experimental treatment for dream therapy with kids. And she is the social worker that goes in and talks to the kids to try to like deal with their scared problems, nightmares, and things like that. So she goes into the mind of a serial killer to try to find out where he put this woman. We got Jennifer Lopez playing the social worker, Vince Vaughn playing the young detective, Vincent D'Onofrio, who is playing the serial killer, who in the dream world is just some of the creepiest shit you've ever seen, even outside of the dream, but even more so in the dream. He's just scary. So scary that his wife wouldn't sleep with him in the same room for 2 weeks after he got done filming the movie and she watched it. And we also have Jake Weber, who's in this movie, who, if you remember, was one of the lead guys for the Dawn of the Dead remake. But yeah, this one, I really enjoy watching it. It's flawed. It definitely is more aesthetics over substance, but the plot is interesting enough to take sort of the 90s serial killer vibes and put it into a ridiculous situation. But when you're in those dream spaces and everything is going all over the place, they look really cool, and the artistic direction that they took with it is amazing. The funny thing is, the reason they chose this guy is because, you know, a lot of those scenes in the dream space are done like a music video would be done. And there are some really genuinely awesome, grotesque scenes in the dream sequences. But Tarsim Singh actually did the movie, and he was one of the directors that did The Fall, which is another trippy movie. Selfless, which had Ryan Reynolds in it, where they switch out his personality with a billionaire who's trying to extend his life. That movie bothered me a great deal. I'll explain it some other time. you know, he was definitely well equipped to do a lot of the direction. There's some pretty tropey stuff in here, some laughable stuff in this movie too. But the real selling point is Vincent D'Onofrio and the aesthetics of this film. It is not a fantastic movie, although some people probably absolutely love it for that reason. I would say this is probably like a 7 out of 10. It is worth watching, and I really like how they go into people's dreams to try to fix a serial killer. Really interesting stuff, even if it's a little ham-fisted when it gets it done. You can get this on 4K or Blu-ray with a wish list link down below, so if you want to get it later, you can. The 4K is a little pricey right now, so you may have to wait and just keep it on your wish list till they print another copy of it. Hopefully they do. There is a Blu-ray copy you can get as well, or you can rent this online. It's not on streaming yet. Up next, we have They, which a lot of people like to make pronoun jokes in this. That's not what this is, okay? It's just a word, they, like ominously, they. Anyway, this is supposedly a Wes Craven produced film. It is not. I don't know why they said that, but this is a movie that came out in 2002. It was a really big budget film that was going for doing something really unique and different with night terrors, and I'll explain it now. So a psychology student who is really talented, she and her friends start to have nightmares, and she is starting to feel like there is something connecting her to her childhood and her best friend, who she's kind of been a friend to, who's gotten a lot of issues since a child. He felt like he was being taken by a bunch of creatures into a closet. She starts to see strange marks on her bodies that kind of correlate with the stories that her friend told her right before he unalives himself. This, of course, sends her spiraling out of control. She is seeing things in the middle of the night in the dark, lurking around, trying to hunt her down, and she's telling everybody, but nobody believes her, which is pretty frustrating, I can say, as a viewer. And of course, you know, she's a therapist, so it's even worse for her than anybody else. This leads to so much worse. It leaves a lot of questions in its wake, which I think made a lot of people very upset. But I personally like that there's these things living in the shadows or lurking between dimensions that are interdimensional, maybe? I don't know. It just seems cool. It's a crazy film that is dealing with night terrors, which is something I had as a child, so my curiosity was through the roof when I watched this movie. But it was one of those big budget films that, you know, had some pretty decent actors, but more money was spent on like the effects and stuff like that, and it kind of follows that mainstream narrative. It isn't perfect, and it doesn't explain all the answers. The unknown is the scariest, most oldest fear of mankind, okay? Jesus, people, don't get so mad about not answering questions. It's a mystery that's supposed to last with you, okay? Anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. This is actually directed by Robert Harmon, too, by the way. You know, the guy that did The Hitcher, that tiny little film that is considered to be one of the greatest thrillers of all time, and I can't wait to watch it. I got that nice box set, by the way.
I fucking love that box set.
This is a different version of Robert Harmon, years in the future from The Hitcher, and it is a different taste. And it's also written by Brendan Hood, who did the movie The Deaths of Ian Stone, which was like those 8 films to die for, I think, ones that were in the theaters. That was actually a pretty decent film. Another kind of, you know, hopeful film where it's not exactly the best film, has some issues, but it's an interesting plot enough to make you want to see more. When this girl starts having night terrors again after her friend unalives himself, the whole world around her becomes kind of like a playground for what's in the dark. And I would think that the movie Lights Out got a little bit of inspiration from this movie, because there are some scenes where the light scares away the bad stuff in the movie. Now, if you want to see a bunch of guys with sand in their, yeah, this is the movie that's gonna make those people pretty. Anyway, I don't think it's as bad as everybody makes it out to be. It's not a perfect film. By no means is it a perfect film, but there is stuff that happens in the movie that I really wanted to see more of. There's a lore there, that there's this, you know, thing going on that I really wanted to like. And yeah, people call it generic. I think it's above average in some respects. It's not going to be for everybody. but it is far from the worst film. And if you look up the reviews on this, it's like 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. I will admit, this last time wasn't the best experience I've had watching this, but at the time when I watched it, I think it was a lost gem that I was like, oh, hey, you know, this wasn't as bad as I remembered. For what it's worth, it could be, you know, a 6 or 7. I like to say it's about a 7 out of 10 for me. They can be found on this Blu-ray, but it's pretty expensive. I think you might be able to find a copy on eBay for like 20 bucks, but most of the places are selling it for like 40 bucks. There are DVDs of it though, and I'll put a link down below for you, so if you want to pick up a copy, you can. Otherwise, it's for rent. And finally, we have Nightmare Detective, which this is also a gift that was given to me to review by Resolution. Thank you so much for this. This was actually, I don't want to spoil it, but in one of my haul videos, which I got a new one coming out here real soon, they're just very hard for me to edit because I get so tired while editing and it takes like 10, 15 hours to edit that thing. This one is a movie from the director Shin'ya Tsukamoto, who is also an actor and did a lot of movies with him as an actor, as well as the director of Tetsuo, the Iron Man. Yes, that guy who did a ton of crazy films that I got a box set for as well. And this was part of that as a way to watch all of them. Now, this movie does have a sequel. I'm not going to talk about that one because I haven't watched it yet. We'll talk about it later. But this is essentially about 3 lonely individuals in Tokyo that are contemplating unaliving. And their lives somehow are intertwined. They're not sure if they're actually unaliving themselves because it's happening in dreams with their doors locked. So somebody is causing people to die or do that to themselves through their dream. And it's up to a detective trying to find the serial killer, but the guy is doing it through dreams. So they hire this crazy guy who is played by Masanobu Ando. Anyway, he plays the nightmare detective who goes in people's minds and sort of battles their problems, but it can kill him. And that's the danger of being a nightmare detective. So these cops, there's one half of them trying to deal with the physical world, trying to deal with the guy, the old method of police work. And then there's this younger girl who is a detective trying to deal with the more crazy stuff with going in people's dreams, because it's becoming apparent through every single death, there's no way anybody could have gotten in there and that they either did it to themselves or they were murdered. And this movie kind of explores that a little bit in not the perfect fashion, especially not for Shin'ya Tsukamoto. I wouldn't say that this is like something better than Tetsuo the Iron Man. You can see some of the camera work and stylings of him in this movie, but when I think of nightmares, I think of like scary shit. And they don't really explore that way too much. Like, it should be a lot more than they do in this movie. Instead, it's dealing a lot more with the people who are investigating what's going on than the actual dreams. And it doesn't really get to the point until the very end where things are pretty crazy. There are things happening in the physical world and in the dream world, so you're not really sure which is which. So they do a decent job of kind of playing with that space, but nothing felt like I was in a dream that much, except for a few moments that I really did like in the film. This is the unrated version, by the way. There's a rated version with like 6 minutes less. I don't know what those minutes are, but I wouldn't want to remove anything else from this movie. It needed more. I didn't love this movie, but I didn't hate it either. And there is a sequel that I do want to check out, and I'm hoping that it's much better. The character who's playing the Nightmare Detective he's a little messed up, and rightfully so. He's psychic, so he's experiencing everything that people have in their minds while almost dying, trying to save them. So interesting concept. I just think that they could have done more with it. I don't think they executed it as well, at least not for Shin'ya Tsukamoto, from my opinion. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing part 2 though, but you can watch this if you want to pick it up and wish list it on DVD. It's up on DVD for you to check out. I think it is on Vudu. You can watch it free with ads, so you can do that too. But yeah, I hope I picked out some good ones for you guys that you might want to check out, or you didn't know has been released at least, or ones you haven't thought about in at least a long time. These are movies that I think all deserve some attention. Even if they're not the perfect movie ever, there's still something about it that might bring you to an ultra fan or maybe not. And yeah, are you guys one of those people that had dream problems when you were a kid? I would love to hear your stories down below, and any movies you think would fall into this category that obviously deserve your attention. But yeah, that's everything, guys. Thank you so much for coming by each week for this weekly watch list. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And as always, long live the void.